they're coming out with Magic Kingdom. They're getting a Cars World. Magic Kingdom is getting an evil, like a villains area to go up against Universal's villains area. So, do you see all the new Disney stuff they're doing at Magic Kingdom and Epcot and Disney World?
Yeah, they're doing Monsters Inc.
Yep.
What are those suspended coasters? I don't know. That one looks interesting. Lots of new stuff coming to Disney. I keep seeing videos of, like Deadpool now at like the Avengers campus, but lots of cool stuff from D23. Not gonna lie, like Disney might have me back on board with some of the stuff that they're putting out now.
I mean, purely on the shoulders of Ryan Reynolds, right, and Hugh Jackman. I mean, breathing life back into Marvel. I feel like.
Yeah, and that saves everything for Disney. That was a big gamble and it paid off clearly. Great movie.
I don't know if it was a gamble for Disney because it was owned by FX. It was like a gamble, I guess, for FX when they produced it. But when it was Disney, I think it was like already proven that Reynolds was going to kill it. And then especially this one, I think, is when they were like, you killed it in 2 for us, so let's dump all our money into you. And he freaking made $1 billion and counting. This is the first movie that I can remember that me, my girlfriend, and my sister all were like, I would see that again. I would definitely see that again in theaters.
Absolutely. Everybody walked away from it liking it. Deadpool was probably like, I mean, I wouldn't say it was my favorite movie of the year in terms of like great cinema or anything, but in terms of like a trip to the movie theater, get everybody out, have popcorn, go crazy, great movie. Really enjoyed it.
What would you say is your best movie of the year? You're a big cinephile.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a really, really tough one. And I might have to come back to it. I hadn't made an entire
name a couple. Name a couple.
Well, I recently just saw Twisters, and that was pretty good. I wouldn't put that up at the top. I'm gonna go through my purchase history on the Alamo Drafthouse app now. The Bike Riders was really good with Tom Hardy and Austin Butler. That was pretty cool. I liked Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes a lot, although like that wasn't for everybody. Another controversial one, Challengers, was pretty good with Zendaya.
Okay.
And yeah. That's Perfect Days was really good too. That was a Japanese foreign film about a janitor in Tokyo that cleans toilets, and then it turns out he's actually from like a really wealthy family, and he's just doing it because like it gives him purpose in life. And it was a great movie. Really loved it. Called Perfect Days. Highly recommend. He gets through it by listening to like Lou Reed music, like Perfect Day and stuff like that. So yeah, highly recommend.
That's a man who clearly knows movies, is to not only be asked what the favorite movie of the year is and be able to give 3, 4, 5, 6 examples of movies, but then the ultimate pick being a Japanese foreign film about a janitor and reciting the main plot in 15 seconds. Bravo to you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, highly recommend. Just like a little Japanese slice of life, and Japanese culture is so interesting, and I think that anybody could enjoy that movie, especially if you're into foreign films. Check it out. Let me know what you think.
What's it called? The Perfect Day?
Actually, if you watch any of those movies that I just listed, please let us know in the comments. And while you're there, like and subscribe. And you can also check us out on, well, I'll let the banner come up if Tom wants to bring it up. But yes, like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know about those movies. What was your favorite movie of the year? What's been your favorite fight of the year? What fights do you want to see? What you think of our picks? Yes, let us know your favorite movie of 2024. Also, check us out on X and Instagram @_picking winners. Soon to be changed, I think, to just straight picking fights. And then we also got our personals @pickingfightstom, @pickingkeith. And check us out on Spotify for audio and video. Now you can see our records underneath our names, so you don't even have to go into the description for those, but everything I just listed off is also in the description tagged in our videos. So with that being said, you want to kick this thing off officially?
It's time!
What's kicking, everybody? We are back for another episode of Picking Fights. I'm Keith, joined as always by Tom. Tom, how are you today?
I'm doing awesome. How are you doing, Keith?
I'm doing well. That was my best auctioneer impression. We got UFC, 305, Australia,
305.
Back in Perth. We're doing some fights and eating some Vegemites. big main event this week: Dricus du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya. I know they've been doing like a little bit of a tour, but for some reason, it feels like this card isn't super hyped up. I don't know why. Maybe because it's primarily been in Australia and a lot of the media is like different time zones or something, or I don't know. It's just kind of odd. Like I've seen press conferences, I've seen them make appearances, but it's not getting the attention that I think that it deserves because this is a really big fight. There's been a lot of beef between these two guys for years now, almost. Lots of comments made about who's legitimately from one place and who's not from there, and who's going to make who eat someone's words and whatever. Lots of beef. And then the co-main event is sick because Kai France is awesome, and Steve Erceg just had a great fight against Alejandro Pantoja not too long ago. So I'm super pumped for this one. This main card is awesome. The prelims are pretty good. So what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is that there's an Australia card, New Zealand card, and it's not doesn't have Alexander Volkanovski on there, doesn't have a Robert Whittaker on there. I mean, I know that those guys are eyeing up some different fights, but it just kind of feels like something's missing a little bit when we try to send an Australian or a down under card to be more inclusive of everybody over there, and those two guys are missing. But super sick to have Israel Adesanya fighting again against Dricus du Plessis, finish off that grudge match. And you have Kai France and Steve Erceg. Steve Erceg is a guy who, I don't want to say came out of nowhere, but that's just not a division that has a lot of eyeballs on it. So the fact that Steve Erceg is kind of a weird dude, but in the battle of the Australians or the battle of the New Zealanders, or I don't even, it's probably terrible to not know because how much you want to bet that they're. Yep, exactly. So Erceg's from Australia, Carl France is from New Zealand, a tale as old as time, if you will. So excited to see how this one goes. And you know what? Bring a little bit of notoriety to the 125-pound division. Why don't you?
Yeah, those are probably my favorite two fighters in that division. So I'm super stoked for that clash. And it's interesting you did mention like there's no Volkanovski and a lot of those Australian, New Zealander mainstays on here. Well, we're starting to see a new class of Australian, New Zealanders that are popping up on all these cards, and we'll talk about them in a little bit. But I mean, let's just jump into our prelim notables because there's one guy I really want to talk about who's becoming an Australian mainstay. All right, so this is a guy that I'm super hot on, and we were talking about him a little bit before, but that's Jack Jenkins. I love Jack Jenkins. This guy is a dog. He did lose his last one out against Chepe Mariscal, which is absolutely fine because we thought Chepe's a dog too. And he's fighting Herbert Burns, which I like for him, man. Herbert Burns is really not that great. He's had to get carried out by his brother Gil numerous times. We have this rule on this show that there's only one good brother. And even though Gilbert hasn't fought in a while and he's lost his last couple, I still think that Gilbert's incredible and he's given us some of the best moments in the sport. And Herbert Burns is just not there. Jack Jenkins, on the other hand, is absolutely vicious. I saw a pretty funny comparison. I bet it was in a meme, and now I have to go back and look for it. It escapes me. But basically, like Jack Jenkins, they called him like Australian Joe Dirt. And yeah, he's sick, dude. He fights with like a hillbilly ferocity. There are like similar hillbillies in Australia. Like mountain people, tough, like outdoorsy, rugged people. And that's how Jack Jenkins strikes me. Like he's an adventurous type guy. And that's outside the octagon, like mountain biking, doing crazy shit. And that's in the octagon as well, where he's willing to just go toe-to-toe with pretty much anybody and throw. And he had his debut against, who was that? Don, the guy with the butterfly tattoos.
It's a pretty sick Tapology picture.
Yeah, that is pretty dope, man. But who's that guy that he fought? I think it was in New Jersey.
Don Shainis?
Yeah, Don Shainis. He looked awesome against Don Shainis. He looked really good against Jamal Emmers, even though that was a split decision. But I just don't think that Herbert Burns has the speed, the head movement, and the defense overall to really keep up with Jack Jenkins, because Jack Jenkins really likes to he likes to mix things up where, it's like head, body, leg, head, body, leg, leg. Like, you just don't know what to expect from Jack Jenkins. And his leg kicks are stupid. Pre-UFC, he broke so many legs with his leg kick. And he did get hurt against Chepe Mariscal, which is fine. It's Chepe's good. And he took some time off. Now he's back for Australia. Yeah, I just see Jack Jenkins probably chopping away at Herbert Burns with that leg kick and flexing all the combinations and putting on a fun show for his Australian home crowd. Minus 550 is a pretty heavy favorite. So he's kind of like a decision guy in the UFC. He did have a lot of finishes pre-UFC. Herbert Burns does have the propensity to be finished somewhat often. So it's a tough call, like how you want to maximize it. But I'm a big fan of far Jack Jenkins. So yeah, I mean 98 to 2%. I think he's going to put on an absolute clinic. So I'm heavy on Jack Jenkins. Excited to see him on all these Australian cards going forward. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm riding on Jack Jenkins here. Pause. I think Jack Jenkins is a guy who's going to get it done. Like you said, he's versatile in a lot of different ways. He has those devastating leg kicks, and he's just a better striker than Herbert Burns is. Herbert Burns doesn't traditionally go too long in a fight. He does have the propensity to get finished, and I think if somebody's going to get finished in this one, it's going to be Herbert Burns by Jack Jenkins. I mean, you said it all. You saw it on Tapology, minus 550. It's a heavy line, but I haven't seen anything from the 36-year-old Herbert Burns, especially not over his last three, that makes me think he's going to go out there with any sort of intensity or, ability to ward off adversity. You know what I mean? I think he's a guy that unfortunately is becoming known for shelling up 4 or 5 minutes into the first round or somewhere in the second round if he gets there. So Jack Jenkins, I think, going to have some pretty easy sledding ahead of him. Of course, famous last words, but I'm pretty confident Jack Jenkins is going to get this one done on Saturday.
Super agree. You got any more for us?
Yeah, so looking at the prelims, something I did want to draw a little attention to is this fight between Ricky Glenn and Keenan Song. Ricky Glenn, we're talking about, guys who are on losing streaks. Ricky Glenn is going to be, unfortunately, one of them. Ricky Glenn is 1-3-1 over his last 5. He's plus 190 coming into this fight at 35 years old, roughly about the same size, a little bit shorter reach than Keenan Song, but Keenan Song is really fast, and when he lands, he can land with a lot of power. He knocked out Callum Potter 18-8 just under 5 years ago. He's got 2 losses to Max Griffin and Ian Machado Gary, but Max Payne Griffin, we saw him go on a little bit of a run, and we saw Ian Gary is still undefeated, even though Keenan Song is one of the last few guys to actually get knocked out, get finished by Ian Gary. He's got a win over Rolando Bedoya and then lost to Kevin Juzek by decision. I think he looked a little bit better in that one. I think ultimately it goes down to who is the better fighter in this one at this point in their career. I think there's a time where I probably would have taken Ricky Glenn here, but I think there's just a little bit too much power in Keenan Song's hands. I think he's a little bit faster at this point, and he's 170 pounds. This fight is at 170 pounds. So you have Ricky Glenn now going up. Perhaps the weight cut was what was getting to him, but I think he's, going to be substantially smaller in size. You also look at this last fight. It was against Drew Dober 10 months ago, getting knocked out by Drew Dober going up. Potentially will give him a little bit better chin, but at 35 years old, I'm not super confident of it. I like Keenan Song by knockout here. What are you thinking, Keith?
Yeah, I'm right there with you on Song. I feel like the fight against Ian Gary was a little bit, he was a little rushed, a little bit lackluster on his defense that time around. Because, yeah, I mean, we've seen Ian Gary now look human against certain guys. But at that point in time, he was like the type of guy that if you wanted to beat him, you had to go out there and be super aggressive, like you would against a Hamzat type of guy. There was like an aura around him when Song Kanan or Keenan Song fought Ian Gary. So, I mean, that loss has aged well, clearly, besides being finished. But I like Song here. So, rolling right there with you. And then you got any more for us?
In terms of prelim notables that I really want to talk about, look it up here. We have Tom Nolan as the minus 4,000 favorite. We can talk a little bit about Tom Nolan and Alex Reyes. Alex Reyes is, an unfortunate case, to put it mildly, for the UFC. He's a guy who we were looking at it earlier before the show. Of Alex Reyes, you notice that has a 6-year layoff between his 2 fights, getting kneed by Mike Perry by knockout. And then the fight against Charlie Campbell, where he was also knocked out. This is a guy who was out for 6 years because he had broken his back. And then in preparation for repairing that broken back. He got stem cells, and those stem cells caused a spinal infection. And that's why this guy had been out 6 years. Coming back at 37 years old. Now he's closer to 38 years old against a guy like Tom Nolan in Australia, 24 years old, has a lot of knockouts on his record here, and fought some pretty solid competition beforehand. Has the loss to Nicholas Mata in his first UFC fight, then came back, knocked out Victor Martinez. I'm just concerned. A guy like Alex Reyes, who has spent so long out of the cage, came back 10 months, and then, he's fighting again. There's just a lot of things that concern me for Alex Reyes here. I think Tom Nolan is fast. I think Tom Nolan is powerful, and I think Tom Nolan is going to get this one done by knockout. What do you think, Keith?
Oh, right there with you. Absolutely. It's very tough because, Alex Reyes, that's a great comeback story and everything, but Tom Nolan is legit. Lost 2 fights ago, but bounced back, and he looks really good. Another one of these up-and-coming Australian kids. So right there with you on Tom Nolan. I'm good. I mean, I think we want to talk about that. I will mention real quick, you got Casey O'Neill versus Luana Santos. I'm going to go with Luana Santos here. Casey O'Neill, love the girl. She's super cool, super pretty, fun personality, but Luana Santos is looking like a killer right now. And Casey O'Neill, since coming back from her injury, is very, very hesitant, sitting back, being a little bit boring, whereas pre-UFC days, she was more aggressive. And then I think she even lost to Roxanne Modafferi maybe at one point when she first. Oh no, she beat her, but it was a close fight. It was annoying. Mm-hmm. I just think if you are going to be successful as a chick in the UFC, you got to go out there and you got to smoke Roxanne Modafferi. I mean, Roxanne had some good fights against really good competition, was able to hang in there. But I mean, not to go back to Roxanne Modafferi hate, but God, I'm glad that lady is fucking gone. She retired. She didn't die or anything, but. And then 2 losses back to back, coming off the injury. So I'm gonna go with Luana Santos. The momentum's in her favor, and Casey's kind of falling off a little bit, unfortunately, King Casey. So I'm going with Luana Santos here, and the line's pretty solid too.
Yeah, minus 150. I think at this point for me, I just don't have any confidence in women's MMA nor my ability to pick it. So for that reason, I'm going to roll the. I really shouldn't do it because you've traditionally been really good at picking women's MMA, but shit, plus 125. I'll roll the dice on Casey O'Neill. She has had a decent ground game before. She has a couple submission victories. Traditionally, she has been bested on the ground, and we know that's Luana Santos's bread and butter. They're both pretty young. Luana Santos just fought, turning around in 4 weeks. Look back at some of her competition. She's been in the UFC now for a little bit. Turning around on 4 weeks maybe is a new experience for her. Maybe she's going to be able to keep it rolling. But shit, I'm feeling like a contrarian. So let's go Casey O'Neill. Maybe it'll end up looking bad, or maybe I'll end up looking quite prophetic.
All right, fair enough.
That's even a word.
That's the first one we split on so far. All right, then we got one more, right? We want to talk about, what was that, Walter Walker?
Right. Exactly. Junior Tafa, Walter Walker. Junior Tafa is a guy who, and I don't want to talk about this one necessarily because I feel strongly one way or the other. I honestly think both of these guys are not that great. 11-1, Walter Walker, not in the UFC, tight in UFC. He got all his knockouts against questionable competition, comes in, loses the decision to Lucas Breshkin, which he really didn't show us much. There is something to be said about that first initial UFC entrance fight and, what it says about you and your career. But you also know Junior Tafa's guy who's been around the block a little bit. Justin Tafa, his older brother, has some knockouts in Rising, which is a legitimate promotion, came in, had that decision loss to Muhammad Usman, knocked out Parker Porter, and then a loss to Marcos Rogerio de Lima. I haven't seen anything in terms of actual power from Walter Walker inside of the UFC. I have Justin Tafa, but I've also seen Justin Tafa have an awful chin. So it's really a roll of the dice here. And I think it's interesting between two young potential prospects. Walter Walker, obviously the brother, I don't know why I said obviously, but the brother of Johnny Walker. I almost said Wes Welker. I don't know why. It really makes no sense whatsoever. I don't know. He's got the longer reach. I want to go Walter Walker, but he's a walker, right? So in things that he's supposed to win, he loses. And when he's supposed to lose, he wins. And I think he's supposed to win here. But also you have Justin Tafa, who's the favorite on Tapology. They're giving him a fight in Australia. So Shit, maybe I'll go with Tapology since it's 50-50. I think I'll go with Tapology. I'll go with Justin Tafa rising to the occasion in front of the Australian crowd. He's feeling it. He goes in there and stuns Walter Walker and gets it done and probably does some sort of shoey thing. But also, isn't he in like some? He's him and Justin, aren't they doing like business it? I don't know. Maybe
Yeah,
I'm thinking of Tai Tuivasa.
no, I think the Tafa brothers have a beer company, but I could be wrong. I think they started like an IPA or like a microbrewery or something. But I'm right there with you with Junior Tafa because Walter Walker lost to Lucas Bresci, and then you look at him; he's a 1-4 over his last 5. Lucas has really given us nothing to work with. Like he's been in some fights that he should win, beat Walter, should have beat him. But it's you're right. He's a walker. He likes to let his chin hang out there. He gets touched up a couple times. It's just I could see a world in which Junior goes out there, gets gassed, gets sloppy, like he does, like him and his brother do from time to time. And then they stand flat footed and start taking really, really big shots with their chin in the air. Like they start taking big swings and eat, try to like eat one to take, give one to take one type deal. But I'm still gonna roll with Junior Tafa here. I'm just like not super confident, but I like him better than Walter Walker. Getting it done in front of the home crowd. I like that point quite a bit. That's a running theme on this card. So
I think it's interesting. If you have to point out that you're the clean monster, maybe you're not so clean. I don't know. I'm just making a thing. Like if you have to go out of your way to make clean in your nickname and you look like that,
right.
So huge.
Yeah.
I don't know. Both guys are big, so maybe it's just great genetics, but I don't know. There's something odd about that to me.
Look how skinny Johnny Walker is, though. Like, how genetic could it be, right?
Hey, I don't know. Maybe it's fast. He used it like fast twitch stuff. Who knows?
Yeah,
but,
maybe.
Who knows? I mean, it's a 50-50 toss-up fight between two guys who are wildly unproven and look like they have power. Have seen glimpses of it before, but hard to compare competition levels. So hopefully we'll see someone get knocked out and it won't be two guys who get really tired by the middle of the first round and then they just dance around each other. And even if that is the case, hopefully one of them just goes down and calls it, instead of actually fighting. So
I hope so.
With that being said, was that?
I hope it ends in a finish.
I mean, yeah, and an aggressive one and not a finish by exhaustion.
Yeah, don't give me some bullshit.
Yeah.
That song means that it's time for our main card picks, and we got to kick it off with Li Jingliang versus Carlos Prates. Another name I have a hard time saying, but I like the guy. However, I like Li Jingliang a little bit more as like more of a fan perspective. But Li Jingliang is as streaky as they come. Win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. And as much as I like Carlos, I think he's an awesome fighter. I mean, you look at the guys that Li Jingliang has lost to and the way that he's lost to him, right? He lost to Hamzat, got scooped and dumped. Daniel Rodriguez, close split decision. D-Rod not looking great. Beat Muslim Salikov. Decent win. Muslim Salikov getting old. Good win against Santiago Ponzinibbio. The guys that he's lost to are pretty good. Neil Magny, decision loss to Neil Magny. Neil Magny's great. But then you look and Mr. Carlos has been finishing some guys since he got into the UFC. Trevin Giles and Charles Radke. Those are 2 wins. 2 really good wins. Good competition. So I think I'm going to have to roll with Carlos Prates here. Better ground game. We've seen Li Jingliang struggle on the ground. His hands are really great. He's got great boxing and everything, and he's vicious. He fights with grit and intensity. Part of me wants to take him to win just because he's win-loss, 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 and he lost his last fight, so he's due for a win. But also Carlos Prates, younger, hungrier dog, I think, and yeah, I'm going to roll with the people at Tapology. I think he has more ways to get it done. If he gets Li Jingliang to the ground, it's probably over. So I'm going to go with Carlos here. What do you got, Tom?
Yeah, I noticed he was part of the Fighting Nerds team, and those are, I noticed sometimes when a gym gets hot, a lot of the fighters at that gym will subsequently catch fire, and Fighting Nerds is one that's basically as hot of a gym as you can get right now. And also Carlos Prates fights with that same style that we're used to seeing, really aggressive finishing style jiu-jitsu that complements perfectly a really quick, abusive striking game where you go to the legs, devastating punches, elbows, kicks. Really well-rounded fighters when it comes down to it. And I think Carlos Prates is going to have his way with Li Jingliang. Pause. I think Li Jingliang is at 36 years old. He's going to be a little bit even though he's known for having really devastating, strong punches. I think Li Jingliang is unfortunately past his prime here. 36-year-old against a 31-year-old hungry on an aggressive team that they're out there competing every single day. Lee is strong and has really, really good grappling, but I think the aggressive style of jiu-jitsu that Prates is going to bring to it is going to be a challenge for sure. And also, if they want to get in a back and forth striking battle, I think Carlos Prates is going to have the edge. You talked about it yourself, Keith, about the actual wins that Li Jingliang has. Santiago Ponzinibbio, solid win, but that's 3.5 years ago when he was, 32 years old. 2 years ago, he has a win over Muslim Salikov. These losses, Neil Magny, okay, half, solid, half decent. You have Hamzat Chimaev, sure, that's no problem. But D-Rod split decision loss to D-Rod. D-Rod, like you said, not a great trajectory for D-Rod as of late. So I think Carlos Prates is going to go in there, get the finish in the second round.
All right, I like it. I like the pick, and you're right about the fighting nerds. I didn't even notice that, but yeah, they've been having some guys go out there and like bald fellow with the beard fought Drew Dober, fought like the week before that too. I can't remember his name now off the top of my head.
I'll look it up. We'll get it.
Yeah, I'll find it. But if you want, why don't you kick this one off? Because I'm curious to see what direction you're
Tai Tuivasa, Jairzinho Rozenstruik. This is another one of those unpredictable matchups here. Tai Tuivasa 1-4 over his last 5. Let's take a look at who those fights were against. Derek Lewis, he knocked him out with that elbow, which was an odd look from Derek Lewis. TKO to Cyril Gahn. A lot of that was exhaustion. It took Cyril a long time to do that. Tai Tuivasa was showing off a lot of durability in that fight. You have the fight against Sergey Pavlovich in which he got knocked out. Alexander Volkov, submission by Ezekiel choke, also submitted by Marcin Tybura. He doesn't have to worry about the submission against Jairzinho Rozenstruik, but Rozenstruik is I think going to be faster, despite being a little older. He's got that kickbox technique, whereas Tai Tuivasa, he just plots forward, right? He leaves himself open to be hit. And I'm a banger from Australia. I'm a banger from Wales. I'll always be a banger, or whatever he says. I'm a banger from Sydney. That's what it is. Either way, I think Tai Tuivasa is just a lot less dynamic than Jairzinho Rozenstruik. He's going to be the bigger guy, but not necessarily because of strength. I am leaning Jairzinho just because he's a lot faster and he's a lot more technical and he's a lot more precise. But in the same way that Jairzinho Rozenstruik easily gets overwhelmed is the way Tai Tuivasa is going to win, where he's just going to throw heavy and land. So even though all that's being said, I really hard to pick against the Australians on the Australia card or anyone from kind of that southern. What's that called? Oceania, I think. Anyone from Oceania, really difficult to pick against in this one. So shit, he's on a 4-fight losing streak, but he, power doesn't go away. He's young, 31 years old, and I guess you could say he hasn't been knocked out for 2 years. So, shit, let's go with Tai Tuivasa. I think in the chaos is where he's going to land big, and that's what's going to get done. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm right there with you, and I'm glad that you picked Mr. Shuey because I'm still a fan, even though he's lost 4 in a row. Like, he did fall off after having a great, 2022 was absolutely Tai Tuivasa's year. Capped it off with a win and was everywhere doing shoeys, right? And was super famous. And I think that we're going to get back to that point. He got to that level of fame in the UFC and that level of relevancy where now he's on other cards outside of Australia. He's fighting in Vegas. He's fighting he always was his most successful, most on one in Australia. He takes the shoe, he does his shoe, he fights in front of the home crowd. Like you said, he's a banger from Sydney or whatever his quote is. That's his thing. And Jairzinho gets on his bicycle quick. He's not afraid to put his back against the cage and just eat shots. And I think that a guy like Tai Tuivasa is going to take advantage of that. Like you said, the losses have aged really well. That's really great competition. Sergey hit him with the touch of death. Volkov is becoming like this incredible strategist and knew exactly what he had to do. he touched Cyril Gane a few times, and that's very hard to do. So, like, not to just go over everything that you said, but I don't think that Tai Tuivasa is completely down and out like a lot of people would. The line might even move in Jairzinho Rozenstruik's favor or the opposite way. I mean, I could see it moving towards Tai, so this might be a good one to get early in the week because he is still a fan favorite. And I think a lot of people put 2 and 2 together and go like, yo, he's good in Australia. So, just how we had like pre-pandemic Tony Ferguson, like or baseball glove Tony Ferguson, like legendary versions of different fighters. Maybe there's an in Australia Tai Tuivasa, legendary fighter in there somewhere because as we look, I mean, I'm not really seeing much that took place. Like everything in Australia is a W, I think. So, yeah. So I'm right there with you on Tai Tuivasa to get it done in front of the home crowd and have like an absolutely electric moment and have a lot of people go, oh, okay, Tai's back. So I'm going with Tai Tuivasa as well. This next one.
Well, let me just say that I'm switching to Jairzinho Rozenstruik in a fantastic turn of events. I'm sitting here looking at Tai Tuivasa's entire roster here, his record, and you have the wins over Stefan Struve, Harry Hunsucker, Greg Hardy, Augusto Sakai. I hope so. The one pinpoint is Derek Lewis, and I think that was a little bit more of a fluke and maybe has us overinflating what Tai Tuivasa can do. Once he's up against some half-decent competition, Cyril Gane, Sergey Pavlovich, Alexander Volkov, Marcin Tybura, he loses. And I think Jairzinho Rozenstruik, I would put more in the class of Marcin Tybura, Cyril Gane, Sergey Pavlovich, and Alexander Volkov than I would Augusto Sakai, Greg Hardy, Harry Hunsucker, Stefan Struve, Andrei Arlovsky in 2018, Cyril Asker, all of these names down here. JDS, he has got a loss to. Blagoy Ivanov, he's got a loss to. Sergey Spivak, he's got a loss to. So in a stunning turn of events, stunning, maybe not so stunning, give me Jairzinho Rozenstruik to get this one done.
No, fair enough. Fair enough. I just I don't think that like Tai Tuivasa looked bad against Cyril Gane. And like he had those moments when he got hurt where he was feigning injuries and drawing Cyril in and touched him up a few times himself. That was a great fight, and I think that Cyril Gane presents way more challenges as a stand-up kickboxer than Jairzinho Rozenstruik does. And I just my mind always flashes back to the Francis Ngannou knockout. Not that Tai Tuivasa has Francis power, but the second that you start going wild at Jairzinho Rozenstruik, he gets on his ice skates and he starts moving backwards. And when he's up against the cage, he has a hard time moving out of the way of shots. So I do see a scenario in which Tai Tuivasa backs him down, gets wild in front of the home crowd, and ends this one early. But, that's kind of specific. And there's certainly way more ways for Jairzinho Rozenstruik to get this one done. But anyways, that's another one we split on because I'm still rolling with Tai here. I want to see a shoey. Next one really, really tickles me. We got Mateusz Gamrot versus Dan Hooker. And interesting line here. Dan Hooker plus 210 underdog to Mateusz's minus 260 favorite. They're both very similar in age. Dan Hooker's been floating around the lightweight division. Like he was in the top 5. I remember in like 2020. I saw that meme the other day. It was like Khabib, Conor, Dustin, and then Dan Hooker and Justin Gaethje, I think, at one point not too long ago. And then Dan Hooker fought Islam and then went down to 145. And, it's been an interesting road for Dan. Now he's back at lightweight and he's on a 2-fight winning streak after that 145 loss to Arnold Allen 2 years ago. And the guys that he's fought are really good. Claudio Puelles, solid, but Jalen Turner is a win that, it doesn't age as well after the Renato Moicano loss. Jalen Turner has 0 fight IQ whatsoever. And Mateusz Gamrot beat him as well. But it was a good win for Dan Hooker. A lot of people counted him out in that one. The main difference maker here is obviously Mateusz Gamrot's grappling. He's an ADCC champion. He's stood in there toe-to-toe with some of the best grapplers and wrestlers in the lightweight division. And he's looked pretty good in every single fight. I don't think he's really been finished in the UFC. No, and his only loss recently was to Beneil, who has just as good, if not better, grappling, at least at that point in their career, like 2 years ago. So this is a tough one for me because I don't want to pick against Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker's been in like some of my favorite fights ever. I think him versus Dustin Poirier during COVID might be like my favorite UFC fight of all time, and it didn't get enough love because it was in the Apex during COVID. But the two of those guys just delivering shots, that was incredible. It's not going to look like that this week. It's going to look like Mateusz maybe throwing a 1-2 and then trying to grab onto Dan Hooker's legs. He's got really long legs. He's the slightly taller man here, but like a lot of his length is in his legs for Dan Hooker. And he likes to use like a lot of knees and stuff up the middle. I think that you're going to see Mateusz Gamrot just time up something very well, like a single leg takedown off of a front kick or a knee up the middle from Dan Hooker, grab onto that. Unless Dan Hooker miraculously knocks him out with it, right? That would be pretty sick if he caught him on the chin as he was going down like the UFC game. But anyways, I think I think that Mateusz Gamrot is just gonna open every round with a little bit of striking and start shooting single leg takedowns on Dan Hooker like he always does, and try and wrap him up on the ground and make things really boring and slow. Dan Hooker has had good takedown defense in the past. Not against Islam. We don't want to look at that one. But he has had some really good takedown defense, and I don't know if it's good enough to get through Mateusz Gamrot, though. He's got the striking advantage. He's got the better chin out of the two guys, especially now that he's back. Well, maybe not, but he's got a great chin now that he's back at lightweight. But the grappling is a big difference maker for Mateusz Gamrot. And it's unfortunate, but I think Dan Hooker's going to have a loss in front of his home crowd. So what do you think?
Yeah, this is definitely interesting because you consider the career span of Dan Hooker. I mean, you're looking wins against Jim Miller in 2018, Gilbert Burns in 2018 before Gilbert went to 170. Edson Barboza lost there when he was still really good. James Vick is a name you don't hear a lot. And these are guys I think of when I used to play UFC 2 or UFC 3. Ali Aquinta, he's able to fend off the grappling of Paul Felder. Went the distance with Dustin Poirier. Michael Chandler, did get the better of him, and this is where we start to see that decline. But he really gets to that upper level. Nasrat Haqparast, I know he's a striker, but he has a little bit of grappling to him. I think Mateusz Gamrot is just a little bit of a different story. I mean, he's a guy who, he has his one loss to Beneil Dariush. Who's his other loss to? It's another big name, Guram Kutuladize, in a split decision that could have went honestly either way. I think Mateusz Gamrot is a dude who, just like his name suggests, he's a gamer. He's got strong grappling, but he's also got really strong striking. I think he's fast. He's a little bit younger here, so a little bit less experience in terms of overall UFC experience. He hasn't been around the block as much, but I also think he suffered a lot less damage than Dan Hooker. I think Dan Hooker is known for being back and forth wars, getting bloody, getting messed up, and maybe that would give him experience, but maybe that would also give him the propensity to get knocked out a little bit sooner. You look at his two losses: submission to Islam Makhachev, knockout to Arnold Allen, in which there was a lot going on there. There's a bad weight cut. Claudio Puelles, he got the knockout, but that was really odd because Puelles was like really staying away from him. And Jalen Turner, split decision. That one, it was a back and forth battle. I mean, I think I ended up taking away more that Jalen Turner wasn't who we thought he was and didn't live up to his expectations more than I thought. Dan Hooker looked really phenomenal. The Nasrat Haqparast win is good, but Dan Hooker's been up and down. I think ultimately Mateusz Gamrot is more well-rounded. I think as it gets a little bit later in the fight, I can expect Mateusz Gamrot to continue to do well, whereas Dan Hooker may fade a little bit. Dan Hooker always is going to have that ability, but I just don't feel like he's going to knock out Mateusz Gamrot. And that I don't think he's going to knock out Mateusz Gamrot. I think they're have very similar exchanges on the feet. I think Mateusz has the strong grappling game to just push it over the edge. So I go Mateusz Gamrot. He's going to have enough to win every. It's going to be a close fight, but I think he's going to win every single round. So I'm going Gamrot to get this one done.
Yeah, right there with you. Unfortunately, I don't like the pick. I don't really like the next one either. I mean, I'm excited for that fight. And I'm even more excited for this one. We spoke about it a little bit before. I don't want to pick against either one of these guys. I've been a huge Kai Kara-France fan for years now. His striking has always been so pretty to me. It's just in his last two fights against Amir Albazi and Brandon Moreno, he didn't look too sharp. Amir Albazi took advantage of the wrestling a little bit more. And Kai Kara looked, it was like Kai Kara had a chance in that one because who's that Russian wrestler at 125 that he beat? I can't remember now off the top of my head. Guy was around for a while, and I haven't seen him fight in quite some time. But, I don't think that you're going to really see any takedowns from Steve. Well, you might. I mean, Steve Erceg made some weird decisions against Alejandro Pantoja, right? Like, he went for that takedown in round 5. He does have the grappling advantage over Kai Kara-France, but Steve Erceg's striking as pretty as Kaikara Francis is and how like fluid it looks, Steve Urseg's timing is incredible, especially that lead elbow. He just steps in, like his opponents are going to make a move, and he just steps in and shows the elbow and catches guys with it tons of times. He caught Alejandro Pantoja with that. And you're right. Your point before about him just kind of being thrust into like stardom in the UFC is pretty true because, you know, even though he's not like a superstar, he does have a weird personality. And I think he was like ranked 7 or something with only 2 fights in the UFC when he fought Pantoja. So, you know, it is still like he's still relatively new to the UFC. But I'm gonna go with Steve Urseg. His timing and his striking is so pretty, and he's got he's got the wrestling advantage here, and he's fucking vicious. Like he doesn't look like he'd be vicious. He's a nerd, like in the way that it's just everything is so calculated. Like he kind of reminds me of like a serial killer in a way, where like his personality isn't too crazy. He doesn't want to show too much of like who he is, and then he just goes in there and puts in work, slicing and dicing guys. So I'm going with Steve Urseg here. What do you got?
Yeah, I have to agree with you. Steve Urseg is a guy whose fighting just looks effortless. He's out there and he's just being creative and throwing things together. And afterwards, you know, when you watch Steve Urseg's like fights back, you're like, oh yeah, of course you throw an elbow there. It's so clear, but his body is just working kind of automatically. And it's a guy who just takes his body just kind of lends itself well to fighting. You don't realize it with Kai Kara France is 31 years old. So obviously in his prime, coming off 2 losses here, the quality opponents, you know, Brandon Moreno lost and Amir Albazi split decision loss. Not quite now, Alexandre Pantoja, even though, you know, Brandon Moreno is very, very good. I would say those are probably similar levels of competition. Over here getting finished by Brandon Moreno. You know, meanwhile, we're going the distance back and forth. Steve Ursay did with Alexandre Pantoja. He shows that he's stronger grappling, like you said, Keith, and his striking just seems effortless. He's got, you know, not power that we've realized inside of the UFC yet, but he has outside of the UFC. And, you know, like you said, step in elbows, really pretty striking, the ability to cut you up. And Kai Kara France, honestly, is a guy who does leave himself open a little bit, especially as the fight goes on. So I have those concerns, you know, going into later rounds for Kai Kara France. He's going to come out with a lot of energy. And I think Steve Urseg, you know, he's just so dialed and calculated. It seems like he's been doing this for a very long time. You know, I think some of that nerdism is what breeds that just kind of almost stoic in there in the cage. He's a weird guy outside of the cage. Inside of the cage, I think, you know, maybe all the weirdness dissipates and he's just able to focus on striking, and he's got such that pretty striking that you talked about, Keith. So I'm going with Steve Urseg. I think he's going to get it done, and I think the next time he ends up fighting for the championship, I think he's going to get it done there as well.
Yeah, 100,000% agree. And this is what I always say with guys like Steve Urseg. I wish that there was a good app where, like, I've seen ads for him. I don't trust them. Their reviews look funny. But an app where you could invest in fighters in the future and who's going to hold the belts one day. They've shown, you know, I've seen ads for them. It's just the reviews are like, oh, you don't actually get your money when you go to, like, sell your stocks on these guys. But if there was an option for that, I'd be all in on Steve Ursay. He's not even that weird. He's just reserved, and in the cage, he looks like a sociopath. So, love the guy. Looking forward to seeing what he does. And that brings us to our main event. Why don't you kick this one off for us, Tom? What do you think about this one?
This is a great fight. I'm super excited for this one. And we've been looking forward to it for a while, and we didn't think it would even have, but you know, we thought that I'm trying to get rid of this banner here, but I don't even have like an X to get rid of. It's pretty frustrating. Nevertheless, this is a fight that we kind of expected to see with the challenger and the champion being switched. You know, we thought Israel Adesanya was going to have Dricus du Plessis challenge, and they were going to fight there, but you know, no one could have predicted that, except for me, that Israel Adesanya was going to lose to Sean Strickland, and then Sean Strickland was going to lose the belt contested to Dricus du Plessis. I think that's a fight that we definitely want to see again. But before, you know, I think you got to have Dricus fight Israel Adesanya here. Winner can fight Sean Strickland because there's claims to both fights. Sean wants to get the belt back from Dricus. If Dricus wins, if Izzy wins, well, Sean wants to go and get the belt back from a guy he previously beat, and Izzy wants to prove that he's better than Sean. So I think either way, Sean's going to get the next shot at it. this is going to be a great fight. I think Dricus gets it done. Dricus has been unstoppable when he can breathe through his nose fully, and he doesn't get tired. And even when he did used to get tired, that's when he got better. I think having the belt has given him an air of confidence, and he doesn't seem overly cocky. He just seems pretty confident, which is why I'm excited for the Sean Strickland fight, because no one believes in themselves more than Sean Strickland. So, I mean, except for maybe Israel Adesanya, but Israel Adesanya is just, so odd of a dude. I think he can, really get too into the persona of believing in yourself that it becomes almost detrimental. You surround yourself with yes men, you'll start picking your fights. The one thing you could say about Dricus and Sean, they will fight anybody. And I think they've proven that they're going to go and they're going to fight, take on any fight, anywhere. So I think those are the types of guys that we want contending for the belt. Whereas Izzy's going to pick and choose. That being said, Izzy is a phenomenal fighter, and he picks and chooses his shots like no one else. He has those strong leg kicks. He can get you from a good bit away. He's going to be, the taller fighter, the longer fighter. He's going to be the more precise fighter. But Dricus is a guy who's got a strong chin, and he, moves forward, and Israel Adesanya doesn't do as well when he's constantly moving back. That was a problem against Sean Strickland. He just couldn't get planted on that front foot and fire things at his opponent. He was constantly moving back, couldn't stand still. And I think Dricus is similar. And at least he does that to his opponents, where he's constantly pressuring. And that's why I said Dricus with two nostrils is really the guy that you need to be afraid of. Dricus dual nostrils, we could call him. Because when he can breathe through his entire face, he just doesn't get tired, and he includes that pressure, but he also gets better as the fight goes on, which really begs the question, did he get better as the fight went on? Before he got his deviated septum fixed, Dricus deviated septum, did he get that fixed and then he get better because he can now breathe? Or was he always getting better and he just couldn't breathe, and that's why it didn't, show itself in the way it does now? Either way, I fully expect Dricus to go out there and get it done. Israel can always land a knockout, blow, but I just think there's going to be too much pressure. When he was able to knock out Alex Pereira was standing back and waiting for him. I don't think Dricus is ever going to stand flat-footed, thus I think it's going to be a real problem for Israel. I will say this, though. If Israel does figure it out and is able to knock out Dricus either while moving back or figures out a way around the constant back pedal, I think that also gives him a really, really strong advantage going into the Sean Strickland fight. So if Izzy can figure out Dricus, I think he has a strong chance against Sean. If he can't, then I don't think he has any chance against Sean, and I don't think he's going to get an opportunity because he's going to be 0-2, and that's a lot on the line here for Israel Adesanya. If Dricus loses, well, then he can set up he could still fight Sean, and there's still opportunities. He can hope Sean beats Israel, right? And then he's still, 30 years old. He's still got his career ahead of him. Israel Adesanya at 35 years old, if he loses this fight, there's a big stain on what he would consider his legacy, I'd imagine, what other people would consider his legacy. So there's a lot more pressure on Izzy going into this fight. What do you think, Keith? I talked a lot there.
No, you're absolutely correct. This is do or die for Izzy's legacy, and I think that he knows that. He put a lot on the line when he went in the octagon and did the whole when he was wasted and he tried to get Dricus to say racial slurs to him. That was where Izzy kind of he really rose the stakes on this fight. That was a very public moment. And it really was classless on Izzy's part. And if Dricus wins, it makes Izzy look really, really bad. Now he had a loss to Sean Strickland, who he talked all this smack about, should have beat. And if these guys would have fought when Izzy was the reigning champion, the odds would have looked extremely different, I think. But now we're years removed from Izzy's reign, and I think that the sport has surpassed him. He's too old now at this point. Not that he's really too old. He's still 35, but that is the age when we see champions really start to fall and falter at. And Dricus du Plessis is significantly younger at 5 years. That's big for fighting years. And Izzy's head, we see his head not be in the right spot, right? The whole dog lover thing with Sean allegedly threw him off to the point where even after the fight, he was like, please don't say that again. And I feel like the whole I'm the real African thing has been stewing in Israel Adesanya's brain for years. And he's going to go in there, not in the right headspace, either overly aggressive or underly aggressive like he was against Sean, and it's going to open him up to being caught. Dricus is not afraid to go for a takedown. He didn't want to take – he maybe threatened one against Sean, but we saw him go for them against Robert Whittaker. And the way that like Steve Erceg is calculated, the timing is on point because he's like so smooth and everything. Dricus doesn't look smooth when he's fighting. It's not calculated aggression. It is just all out aggression, like blind aggression, and it wins him fights. The one that sticks out to me the most is Brad Tavares pre-nose surgery when he's just swinging with Brad Tavares back and forth. And because of how aggressive he is, it's just overwhelming. Like his timing is on point because he doesn't stop throwing, especially as the fight goes on. And I think he's going to back Izzy up against the cage. I think he's going to finish Izzy personally. I think it's going to end with a ground and pound where Izzy's stands are popping out and Izzy's going to say it was an early finish, but it's going to be something very obvious where Dricus is just full mounted on top of him, just slugging him from a ground and pound position. I really think it's going to happen like round 3 or 4. He's going to catch him. And the way that Sean Strickland wasn't able to finish him after catching him, I think that Dricus du Plessis has the power and the intelligence to, instead of just up against the cage, just bong, 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 I think he'll shoot the takedown like he did against Robert Whittaker, take him to the ground and pound him out there. So he's too weird. He's too awkward. We've seen Izzy struggle with weird and awkward guys. It's the guys that are by the book and afraid of Izzy that lose to him. And Dricus is neither by the book or afraid of Izzy Adesanya. So I'm going with Dricus du Plessis to beat the ever-living snot out of Israel Adesanya in violent fashion. And now because I said that, he's probably going to get finished, but I'm rolling with Dricus here. I think it's going to be brutal. So that's how I feel about that
one. I don't know if it'll, I mean, it could be, right? Because I don't think it, I mean, I've seen Israel Adesanya back up and get stuck against the cage. I've also seen him use it. Yeah. Yes, I've also seen him move and follow up 1-2, you know, so it could be anything here. So I'm super pumped for this weekend. But with you, I'm giving slight edge.
He's given us so many moments in bad situations where it's going really, really right for Izzy and really, really wrong for him as well. You know, when he's been in like bad spots. So I totally agree with you where like anything could happen. I just think that Dricus is going to be way too much for him, and Izzy's going to be so in his head about this fight because he knows what's on the line here. Like, if he loses to Dricus du Plessis, then all the stuff about who's from where, who he has to concede all of that. That is now out the window. You have no legs to stand on with any of this argument anymore. And, you know, so it's a big deal for Izzy, clearly. You know, I mean, it's a big deal for him. And I think he's going to be so in his head about it. But we'll find out on Saturday. I'm pumped.
Yes, we will. Dricus, 2 breath scene. Not my best. I've been stewing on that one. 2 breath scene. I'm trying to figure out like how do I add some sort of.
You had it with the
2 nostrils.
Yeah, the 2 nostrils. That was better. Yeah, I like that one. That was a good one. All righty, let's kick this bad boy. Let's put a bow on it, actually, not kick it off, wrap it up. Pick rundown, make it quick. We got Keenan Song over Ricky Glenn. I'm going with that. I got Tom Nolan over Alex Reyes. Jack Jenkins over Herbert Burns. Love that pick. I got Luana Santos over Casey O'Neill. And on to the main card, I believe now. No, one more prelim notable. Junior Tafa over Walter Walker. And then on the main card, I got Carlos Prates over Li Jingliang, the Leech. I got Tai Tuivasa over Jairzinho Rosenstrike, Mateusz Gamrot over Dan Hooker, Steve Erceg over Kai Kara France. Love that pick. And Dricus du Plessis over Israel Adesanya. What do you got?
All right. Starting at the bottom, I have Keenan Song over Ricky Glenn. I have Tom Nolan over Alex Reyes, Jack Jenkins over Herbert Burns. Got Casey O'Neill, the underdog, over Luana Santos. And I'm going to take Junior Tafa over Walter Walker in front of the hometown crowd. Main card, Carlos Prates over Li Jingliang. Going Jairzinho Rosenstrike over Tai Tuivasa. Going Mateusz over Dan. Erceg over Kara France. And I'm going DDP, Dricus 2 nostrils over Israel Adesanya to get this one done. Remain champion.
Who called him? It was a while ago. Who called him Dickless Du Pussy? That was a funny one.
I think that was Israel. You know, Dickless Du Pussy.
I feel like that one should make a comeback. That's a funny ass nickname. I'll be looking for it on Thursday's press conference. I'll be looking forward to hearing that one. Actually, just in general, I'm looking forward to that. So let us know what you think of our picks in the comments down below. And while you're here, please like and subscribe too. Let us know what you think is going to happen at the press conference and who you think has the main event and all these great fights that we got in Australia. Check us out on Spotify. You can check out audio and video over there. Also, social media. We're on X at Pickin' Fights Tom, at Pickin' Keith, and the main page is at _Pickin' Winners on Instagram and X. So check us all out over there. And am I missing anything, Tom?
No. Have a good one. Can't wait for the fights.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.